So we're going to wrap by talking about creative, but talking about creative from a lot of different sources that have come to us over many, many shows. A lot of you, as John mentioned at the opening, I'm a lapsed academic. Lapsed academics, being a lapsed academic is a little bit like dropping acid when you were younger. At some point, there's going to be a flashback. Although I've been waiting 45 years for my flashback and it hasn't come yet. So I think I was kind of punked on that one. I may have to go in for a refresh. But I want to give just a little bit of advertising history for those of you who may not know it. Let's start with John B. Watson, Jeff. This guy, actually both of these guys, are John B. Watson. Does anybody know who John B. Watson is? It's a toughie. John B. Watson is the father of American behaviorism. He believed and broke with the Freudian trend at the time in believing that man really was a bundle of habits. It was really, the sum total of human behavior was really simply the function of a series of habits that had developed out of ground instincts, simple instincts of like fear, rage, and sex. And he was the professor of psychology at the University of Maryland. He did a lot of very controversial experiments, as you might imagine, one on a small child and trying to shape its behavior. And he wrote the first child care book, which is sort of child care for Nazis. If you wanted to raise a fascist, this was a really good book to use because of its high levels of discipline in order, again, shape behaviors. But after a sex scandal, he was forced to resign from the University of Maryland, and he went from being the guy on the left to being the guy on the right, and he became the VP at J. Walter Thompson. And he was, in fact, the first to bring psychological theory into the advertising agency. And here is his remit to the creative team. Tell him, by the way, note the sexism, he refers to the consumer only as a him. Tell him something that will tie him up with fear, something that will stir up a mild rage, that will call out an affectionate or love response, or strike at a deep psychological or habit need. That was the creative brief at J. Walter Thompson in the 1920s. He was famous for having helped develop the Pond's soap ads in the 1920s, also helped invent, by the way, the coffee break. For Maxwell House introduced the idea of the coffee break back in the 1920s, and it was all based on his basic concept of behaviorism, that the foundations of behavioral ad targeting are really here, which of course was the root. Also, behavioral targeting was the root of programmatic and digital advertising. This vision of the consumer as a bundle of behaviors you can intercept, you can redirect, you can shape if you get them at the right time, the right moment, with the right message. A lot of the thinking was really grounded in the behaviorism that was originally ingrained at J. Walter Thompson and sort of became the nomenclature of advertising really for decades. If you can follow and guide and redirect and intercept the behaviors as indicated by clicks and online habits, then you can move people to action. And as I think we've seen over the years, as these models, especially in the last 20 years, have driven even more attention to performance, we have seen the obvious downside, which is really a diminution of creative. We've really seen the focus on either grabbing attention or driving performance or driving to a bottom line. And I think many would argue, I'm certainly among them, that we're right now at a bit of a nadir of advertising. Super Bowl 2023 is really a good example. It followed, almost all the ads followed, a pretty simple formula. Throw a bunch of aging celebrities at a bunch of old cultural references and call it a day. The attention economy has gotten to the point where the fight for attention has become very basic and very primal. Just get noticed. Don't necessarily tie it to a brand. Don't necessarily tie it to a message, let alone some higher meaning. So with that in mind, and I think what a lot of us in the industry have seen over the last 5-10 years, With that in mind, over the last year here at our Insider Summits, we have been trying to institute a new panel that we put in most of our events, which is, did you see that ad? We're trying to revive the idea that creative really can work within these channels and that there are people working creatively in these channels, but we need to surface them but also explain and explore why they do this so well to make it easier and inspire others to do it as well. So that's what we've been doing. And what I want to do today is share some of that breakthrough creative that we have been seeing here at these events over the last year. And let me start with one that really it's a very, very simple, humorous concept. This is an advertiser that has been at the Super Bowl in the past, and I think this past year as well, and it's avocados from Mexico. Jeff, would you run that one?
Eve? What's going on?
I might have taken a small bite. Adam?
I'm naked! Hey! Try this! Avocados from Mexico! They make everything better!
Avocados from Mexico!
Well, it's another perfect day in the Big Avocado. Traffic is smooth, as always.
Yo, I love you!
No, I love you.
And in fashion news, naked continues to be all the rage.
It's an avocado, but it's also a phone.
You were right. Avocados from Mexico make everything better.
Ah, sweet liberty.
Now that's a tourist attraction.
Avocados from Mexico!
It's a very simple, cute ad, but it's cuteness with a purpose, and it actually works on a lot of different levels. It's high brand concept.
This food is Dave's hot chicken.
It pulls you into a story, an alternative vision of Earth. What would Earth be like if Eve had bitten into an avocado instead of an apple? But it also has the brand message that's within there and reiterated throughout, and it also has a nice little. It's using the culture creatively. There's actually a little bit of satire throughout in order to tease at familiar cultural moments throughout, and I think you'll see that in a number of these ads. That one of their talents is really to touch on and to satirize and to upend familiar cultural tropes and cultural habits. But it also had a function. I'm not sure it's going to be easy to forget this idea of the avocado phone. I mean, they gave us a nice image to carry with us afterwards. Now let me take another set of ads. This from Dave's Hot Chicken. Many of you may not be familiar with Dave's Hot Chicken. It's not in all areas of the country, but it was started, interestingly enough, one of its co-founders is a stand-up comedian. And some of that spirit comes through in these next two ads.
This food is Dave's hot chicken. It's juicy, hot, and spiced to order. My brother Ryan loved hot chicken, and he would have loved Dave's if it weren't for his other love, time travel.
And now, to warn the dinosaurs about the asteroid. Goodbye, idiots.
By the way, the Dave's Hot Chicken characterizes that piece of creative as the bite and cry. Okay, let's see the next one.
No one loved hot chicken more than my friend Sam. And this juicy, hot, spice to order Dave's Hot Chicken would have been his favorite of all time if it wasn't for his other passion, driving with his head out the sunroof.
Stick your head out, Wiggles!
Wiggles, no!
Please don't mess up and die before you eat Dave's.
That ad went viral. Anybody want to guess why it went viral? Who actually was the star of that ad? Wiggles. Everybody wanted to know if Wiggles died, and that became the hook and the viral hit here. Irony, genuinely dark humor. Again, wit and irony used not just for its own sake, but to actually communicate a brand voice that Dave's follows through in all of its advertising and all of its interactions. It tested well with their target of what they call, this is the way they describe their target, thugs and bros. But notably, it got blowback from 50-something women. They used this. They used programmatic they used programmatic ads, organic and paid social, and ESPN, and they ran this within a 5-mile radius of all of their locations in order to get that in people's heads as they were right on top of the brand. Another brand that has used humor in a different way, but also used targeting in a really smart way, is Jack in the Box. They also used humor and they used cultural signaling in some very funny ways, but it was also grounded in data. And they also used programmatic targeting to focus on a particular audience group and to give them creative freedom to do this. Let's play the Jack in the Box ad.
Trees, 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 have roots and trunks and leaves. Trees, 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 have buds and fruits and seeds. Trees, 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 a home for birds and bees. We all need our trees, trees, trees.
Do you know what that ad's really about? Smoking weed. And it was crafted particularly to appeal to those of us who smoke weed. Just kidding. But the basic idea here, and this is the way they characterize it at Jack in the Box, and they focus grouped the hell out of this, and they discovered that their Jack character is seen by its core audience as a stoner, and they use as their way of coming at and creating ads like this what they call the "if you know" space. Is that if you find a group and use a series of codes, you can actually appeal to them in ways that will go over the heads of anyone who doesn't get it. So if you know was used here. It's not edgy just to be edgy, but it's edgy tied to specific data points, tied to a specific audience. And I think even more interesting is the way, by the way, the Pineapple Express Pineapple Express shake was sort of the giveaway, and they even at one point tried to get the Colorado franchises for Pineapple Express to add CBD to it. They balked. They said that was going too far. But one of the things that what they did that was really smart was they used programmatic targeting to find that core audience that they were after, the likely stoners, and it gave them the freedom to talk in and it has throughout, not just this ad, but a lot of others, to talk in very specific ways. And in many ways, it opened up their creative portfolio and their palette so that they could talk to this audience because they knew that others weren't watching. By the way, the same technique that in 2016 the Trump campaign used to micro-target very specific and sometimes borderline offensive messages at particular voting groups, swing voting groups, because they knew nobody else was watching. But in many ways, advertisers can use that same technique also to open up the creative possibilities. The other theme that's sort of come up a lot over the last year for us is meaningful branding. Now, it's a term that has sort of almost become a tiresome trope within the industry. It's as trendy as it is tired and often disingenuous. One advertiser who was at our Pharma and Health show a while ago is Northwell Clinics. Any of you from New York are probably very familiar with Northwell. Northwell is the largest network of hospitals and clinics in New York. It's actually even the largest employer in New York State. They had a rebrand effort to rebrand the Northwell Hospital Network, but this is probably one of the bravest attempts at meaningful branding that I've ever seen. They not only were trying to align themselves with obviously clear and important health issues, but they aligned themselves with third rail issues like food deserts, like gender and race inequity in healthcare, and the hottest button of all, which is gun safety and gun violence, because as they often are use in a lot of their advertising gun violence as the leading cause of death among children in the US. And they wanted to find a way to aim at social health issues, to make social health core to their brand, but they needed to find ways to talk about it. So here's let's run that video about how Northwell does it.
We're Nathan's parents. Thanks for So we just wanted to ask, and it's totally cool. There's no issue. The tiger.
And we were just wondering if he'll be locked up.
Yeah, will the tiger be locked up for the whole time?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
We never let him out with kids around. Not even our own.
It doesn't kill to ask about unlocked guns in the house. Guns are now the leading cause of death for kids.
And then they amplified this ad in this basic brand messaging, not only online through a lot of digital advertising, but also out of home throughout New York. They focus grouped the hell out of this. And one of the things they were doing was trying to find linguistic ways to take on the issue of gun violence that didn't trigger partisanship. And this is the way they came up with: focus on safety, add a little bit of humor, and try to give people a pathway to address the issue. They were not just aligning with a cultural issue to benefit a brand, but they were really taking a genuine leadership role in that they were trying to help us find a language to talk about this issue without triggering the usual partisanship. Meaningful branding can also take on taboos in the same way. I think one of the core competencies of advertising, at least historically, was always its ability to play with language, to find different ways of expressing ideas that were in the culture, and sometimes ways that could actually ease the culture into better paths that others, and certainly politicians, hadn't dreamed up of. So it's really interesting to watch the ways in which certain advertisers, I think the braver ones, are looking at our own language, looking at key cultural issues and hot points, and actually trying to develop languages that help us get beyond the usual divides. Breaking through taboos is one of the interesting things that came out, especially in our Pharma and Health Summit, because health advertising, as we know, has a reputation for being really, really boring. And as they try to break through, but also they're trying to break through a lot of the taboos around talking about certain issues. I will let this ad speak for itself because it does very well, but this is from the Fexi group called the Welcome to My Vagina ad.
Welcome to my vagina. In here, I make the rules. Rule number one, keep it real, honey. And that means no hormones. Because hormones just weren't right for me. And since my number two rule is, and no parties without protection, I use Fexi, a revolutionary hormone-free birth control gel. It's localized and it works naturally with my body. Oh, and did I mention that it is birth control without hormones? But wait, it gets better. Fexi is also used in the moment, so I only have to use it when I'm planning on having company. Rare but serious side effects include bladder or kidney infection. Contact a healthcare provider if severe or prolonged genital irritation or other urinary tract symptoms occur. Avoid Fexi if allergic to its ingredients. So when it comes to your vagina, make sure your rules include hormone-free Fexi. Coming!
By the way, that ad is still blocked by a number of networks because it still is a taboo that a lot of them don't want to cross. But it literally is an ad that literally is breaking the rules of old sexist taboos, but mapping that against exactly what the brand is doing, which is breaking through the rules of hormone-based birth control. And it's doing it in a way that makes it with humor. By the way, that's Annie Murphy from Schitt's Creek, if you were wondering who that was, and may have recognized her. But it has been enormously successful and popular. That same idea was taken in a different direction by Bayer. This is a major project that Bayer is doing worldwide, but it started in Brazil. When we talk about taboos, there was nothing more taboo than the word vagina in Brazil. In fact, it was illegal to use it in advertising. And Bayer lobbied the government and lobbied regulators to make it an acceptable term, and then they really were trying to change the cultural conversation in a culture that was very, very uptight about women's bodies, about talking about it in public and talking about it in advertising, and Baer's position was, this is doing harm. This is doing harm to women who aren't getting the care that they need. This is doing harm to the culture because it's not talking openly about these things, and it's especially harming young girls. This is sort of an overview, sizzle reel about what they called the Vagina Academy.
Vagina. Young Brazilians aren't learning what they need to know about their bodies, and Brazil's abstinence-only sex education is making things much, much worse. They're not learning that vaginas are complex ecosystems prone to common infections like thrush and bacterial vaginosis, or that sweat, hair, labia big and small are normal, or that they're not supposed to smell like mangoes. And what we don't know can hurt us. Misinformation replaces real information. So when something goes wrong in our pants, we feel ashamed. Too ashamed to get the treatment we need. So Caniston staged an intervention. Welcome to Intensivão da Pepeca. That's Vagina High to non-Portuguese speakers. It's the shame-free school of intimate health on TikTok, and it's giving young people the vital vagina education they're not getting anywhere else. Our teachers are fun, knowledgeable, and relatable TikTok creators who have the real facts and aren't afraid to spread them. Head teacher Claudia Milan, a qualified pelvic physiotherapist, can teach you all about good and bad bacteria in biology, the color spectrum of discharge in art, and how common infections really are in statistics. Oh, and she can demystify the pH scale for you in chemistry class too, while dressed as a giant vulva, naturally. Claudia is joined by qualified psychologist Pekana Lowe and body-positive activist Hannah Khalil for myth-busting, shame-beating lessons in everything from sociology to fashion. Of course, Intensivão da Pepeca has its star students too. We enrolled young creators to learn alongside our audience so they could see people like them talking in a shame-free way about their amazing vaginas. And the whole class of 21 were invited to take part in a final exam to test their newfound knowledge. The results? 43 million views and counting, and so far, 210,000 Brazilians have enrolled. That's 17,000 real-life classrooms of young people who now know what's up down there.
This is simply one of the best campaigns that I've seen in recent years. I spent about an hour on my podcast last summer talking to the CMO of Baer about this. They're really hitting all of the things that advertising can do well, and advertising can do well as a cultural communicator. They are finding an amiable, social-friendly doctor to make it the face of the issue. They leveraged an influencer network really wisely to amplify that spirit and to get it repeated in a lot of different formats. The Vagina Academy has now migrated into other areas. Last I checked, it was working in the UK, but now they were also going to move into the EU. And in each case, they were trying to better understand the cultural context they were working in, what were the set of taboos they needed to address, and to try to come up with specific tools. This is really leaning into the cultural conversation and intentionally trying to reframe it, which I think is a really important part of this, is the ways in which they're using the tools that advertisers have, like language play, like entertainment value, like succinct communication skills to take otherwise dry subjects and actually make them entertaining and communicate in a concise way. All of those things are coming through. This is really advertising at the highest level, where it really can change the cultural conversation if it thinks hard enough about the culture and about the ways in which it can reframe those conversations. Leveraging pop culture tropes, of course, has become somewhat of the simpler way to do this, to take easy tie-ins to popular culture and shows that we know, old and new. Again, see Super Bowl 2023 for that one. But I think Domino's did this in a particularly effective way over the last year because it really tied it into their brand identity. Let's run the Domino's piece.
Use only your mind. Place the order now.
Order up for Dustin.
I don't have any money.
Whoa. What if somebody ordered pizza with their mind?
Actually, now there is a way to order pizza with your mind.
What?
with the new Domino's Mind Ordering app.
This, in my mind, is media tie-in done really well, because one of the things that Domino's does really well as a brand throughout its advertising is it stays true to one of its core brand values, which is innovation. That has always been known as the pizza company that invented the 30-minute delivery guarantee, that invented COVID-safe delivery, that is playing with and experimenting with the self-driving delivery car. They were staying on brand as they were doing this, and they were finding a media tie-in that perfectly aligned with that. And then they were paying off on it with an actual tangible app that they could use and give people. Another one that I think does a really good job of cultural callbacks in a really creative and interesting way, rather than just in a gratuitous attention-grabbing way, is Cheetos and their hands-free ad.
Man, why don't they make doors that, like, open themselves?
Whoa, you just invented...
Automated doors.
Come on, why can't you do this yourself?
Did your face just unlock that phone?
Relax! Car doesn't drive itself.
We're gonna be rich.
I'm gonna be rich.
No, I am going to be rich. Filthy, filthy rich.
The move of a brand sort of inflating its own downside and then using that to upend a lot of our own cultural memory is just a brilliant and cute way of engaging those cultural moments, engaging in the zeitgeist, engaging in our own cultural memory, but doing it in a way that's really tied to the brand. But I think probably the most creative is advertiser that we've seen over the last year here at our summits is also the bravest and the darkest. It's from Liquid Death. Irony is kind of built into the name at Liquid Death, and their advertising almost always comes through. There's a sort of dark irony in the name itself. They follow through in this on all of their advertising. I want to leave you with this, with an example of unfettered irony, dark humor, unafraid to alienate parts of its audience, and at the same time, truly calling attention to all of the other anodyne advertising that it is trying to counter. This is Liquid Death.
Hi, I'm a professional actor, and I'm getting paid to tell you about a revolutionary new product. For years, a bunch of marketing fuckboys have tricked you into thinking that water is just some girly drink for yoga moms. Just look at all the cute brand names in dainty little bottles. Well, hold on to your hot dogs, because I got news. Water isn't cute. Water is deadly. It kills innocent surfers and snowboarders and kayakers. Every year, water is responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. Energy drinks only kill, like, what, 1 or 2 kids? So please, don't fall for the marketing bullshit. Water is not yoga. Water is liquid death. And that's why this brand needs to exist, to finally give water the ice-cold can and ice-cold name it deserves. A brand that parents will hate, but kids might love.
Liquid Death Mountain Water.
Made from the deadliest stuff on Earth. Please, enjoy responsibly.
What do energy drinks kill, 1 or 2 kids a year? That's my favorite line. Thank you all for coming. Go forth and be this creative because we really need you. Thanks very much, everybody.